So then we have Michael Heizer. And he was exposed to numerous influences during his youth that would later shape his art. Not only his father's anthropological fieldwork, which took him to rural California, Nevada, Peru, and Bolivia, but also the work of his maternal grandfather, Olaf P. Jenkins, who was a geologist. Now, he briefly attended the San Francisco Art Institute, but quickly moved to New York in 1966, where he was in contact with a number of prominent artists of the day, including Frank Stella, one of these names that will come up a couple more times. And Frank Stella, of course, famous for his black paintings and minimalism. So that's all going to have an impact on Heizer. And his early works include a number of more conventional abstract paintings and sculptures. But he evidently finds New York rather constraining. So with a colleague, Walter de Maria, Heizer went west in 1967 and created a new genre of land art, or earth art, which used the earth itself as a medium. Far from the cramped studios of New York, and outside the confines of the museum's white walls, his works reached unprecedented size, culminating in what is perhaps his most famous work, which is not levitation, or levitating mass, which is what we see here, but is in fact double negative. So this is a massive piece created on the land, and again, very ephemeral, but yet speaks to environmental issues and environmental concerns. So, double negative consists of two trenches cut into the eastern edge of the Mormon Mesa, northwest of Overton, Nevada in 1969 and 70. The idea is that the trenches line up. Just to give you some idea here, here's the trench starting here, obviously down here, and stretching across the mesa. And what you want to do is it gives you this idea that you really want to connect this line, right? I want this trench to connect all the way across, but yet there's a beauty to the abyss in the middle. So, the trench lines up against or across a large gap formed by the natural shape of the mesa edge. Including this open area across the gap, the trenches together measure about 1,500 feet long, 50 feet deep, and 30 feet wide. Now, in keeping with the mission of modern art, this piece blurs the distinction between sculpture, which would be considered art, and normal objects such as rocks, which, unless they're carved by someone like Michelangelo, are generally considered to be not art. And this encourages viewers to consider how the earth relates to art, or how the art relates to the earth, either way. The sheer size of the piece also invites contemplation of the scale of art and the relation of the viewer to the earth and to the art itself. How does art change, for example, when it can't fit into a museum? How does one observe an artwork that's a quarter-mile long? And here we get a sense of scale. You can see some vehicles down here, and here's the trench much more recently. So how do we handle that? I mean, you can't really put it in a museum. You can't really save it and preserve it. I suppose you could have a group of volunteers that go out there with shovels every so often, but that would kind of defeat the purpose of the work. And at the same time, we're kind of looking at something that shows how man can make a mark on the environment. Even one man, one tiny individual making a mark that will probably be there for thousands of years. It may well outlast human civilization. And a new civilization made up of particularly intelligent ants or something will look at this and be amazed even well after we're gone. Now, though this is a notable piece of art, this is essentially no more than a big trench. And even then, not really a complete trench, since it crosses empty space. In that, it consists more of what was than what currently is. This was an act of removal, not an act of addition. So when we look at it, we really get that sense. This is closer to when it was built, and we get that abyss between sort of those two ends, but yet it can be so metaphorical. The artwork itself is negative space. It begs meditation on the principle of art as creation. And yet he hasn't created anything, he's subtracted from it. So with these two ends of the trench, we definitely get the sense, for example, of a dream or a goal. You could imagine yourself sitting here, looking out towards your dream, and some elements of the goal, especially early on, no matter what your goal is, are going to be fairly easy to achieve. For example, you're starting a business, you set up a business plan, you talk to people, you get ideas. This is the easy part. But then it's always, how do we get to the other side of our goal? It's sort of like, 1, start business, 2, we don't know what that's going to be, and 3, profit. But we can't do that until we cross the void. And here the void is immense, and it always feels that way with goals. So imagine you want to be an Olympian. Obviously, your first step is do a small workout today, but at some point, you have to hit this void and deal with it, and that's where most people fall apart. But again, that's just my metaphor. A lot of people will see different ideas and different things.